You both have your orange standard shirts on. Red, that's your initiative from the jump here. Orange standard means what? And then how do you use that, Alex, as a prism going out? Because I know we'll tell about the stories. I know you watched hundreds and hundreds of players. How do you decide whether they fit the standard or not?
You know, when I first took the job at my press conference, I talked about the orange standard. And the orange standard to me was things that I thought Coach Boeheim had built. And I just wanted to put them into words. You know, we talked about grit, we talked about determination, we talked about competing for championships, and we talk about doing things collaboratively, right? And giving back. And those are the things that that when we sat in meetings and the things that we talked about. I think those are the things that Alex was talking about. He was able to sit in our meetings and as the year went on and trying to get our team better and things like that. So you started hearing different things, but that's what the orange standard is about, is being able to put a product on the floor that competes for championships, plays hard, that gives you, that leaves their heart out there, and that's what I've always thought, when I played here under coach. Sure. That's what we did, and again, those are the things that we talk about, and those are the things that, that's what the orange standard is about. It's about, those checking those boxes and people being able to see that and feel that when you play.
Alex, you have the basketball acumen to begin with, obviously, but you and Eugene's your right-hand man. You can crunch the numbers with the best of them. Are there numbers for grit and heart and want to? And how did you evaluate that?
Yeah, no, I think, look, some of the guys that we ended up pursuing, it was about the numbers, it was about the evaluation, it was the numbers matching the evaluation, matching the intel. Other guys, I felt it was, they just compete. And there are no great metrics to identify defense. There's no great metric to identify heart. I think the goal was to find guys that have had amazing stories, have overcome adversity, that play hard, that have been coached, that have been part of winning programs, that have had amazing stories. This town is very blue collar. These players coming in are blue collar. I know at times we can get caught up in rankings, and rankings matter to some extent. But more than anything, it needed to be what was best for him, what was best for the coaching staff, and really fit a certain identity that we wanted. We wanted high IQ, skilled, hard-playing, competitive guys that valued both ends of the ball, and I think we've got a really well-balanced group right now.
Red, from the dawn of time, I don't care if it's Vince Lombardi, Bear Bryant, modern coaches, they want people who love ball. They want them to be in the film room, put in the extra time. In modern parlance here, be in the Mello Center on their own, right? Is it that apparent that, that's something that you value, and that if somebody's going to be a fit for the program, they better check those boxes?
Well, I think when you come play for us, those things are part of it, but it's the guys that do the extra, right? And that's what you're talking about, the guys that do the extra, not just do the required hours. And again, every coach talks about it. And so, we really kind of pull back the layers in this process of just really trying to really dig deep and see if those guys had that. And we look for that, and you can tell by the intel or their coaches, their former coaches, and things like that. So that is important. That is really a part of it. That's what resonates. I think with any program that wants to compete at the high level and compete for championships, you got to have people that love it, and really love it, and be able to go through the process and be able to bounce back, show resilience. And I think we've done a good job of finding those guys.
All right, we can get into some of the newcomers in time here. We've got a few minutes with Coach Autry and GM Alex Klein over our virtual update here at the Newhouse Sports Media Center. Spending a few minutes here tonight. We'll get to some fan questions as well. But the start of the offseason, really one of the most important things, evaluating the roster off of last year. Who could you and would you want to retain? And the entire conference would want to retain people like J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman. And so those two, who could have been free agents, are staying put here at Syracuse. What is the significant impact of that?
I tell you what, you like Alex said earlier, you talk about rankings and this and that, and the portal rankings. And listen, we were able to keep.
There are no retention rankings.
Right. We were able to keep, two key main players, and that should be celebrated. We were super excited to be able to start with, J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman as your two building blocks moving forward with the recruiting class that you had coming in. And that was huge. That was monumental. I don't think people really understand how important that was, to be able to bring back somebody that scored 500 points, to be able to bring back a guy that played, 10, 11 games, 13 games, and here it is. Cooper Flagg didn't break the double-double record that Donnie had, and Donnie, until he was probably late into end of January, Donnie stopped playing at the beginning of January. So again, a guy that rebounds the ball, that scores the ball, to be able to retain those two, that's a great start. I don't think people really understand, what a great start to our next season, starting with those two guys.
So Syracuse is the only team in the ACC that brings back both of its top 2 point per game scores. Those two accounted for better than 31 points per game. We know about Starling in terms of ball handling and assists, and certainly Donnie Freeman in terms of rebounding. So the stats are there. If you were to look down the entire ACC, 18 schools, and take their top couple of players, there's a lot more exhaust eligibility, went into the portal, some transferred out of conference, some transferred within the conference, so we'll see again maybe wearing a different uniform down the road. But the idea of having a 1-2 punch retained is going to be rare going ahead to next year's season, and a feather in your cap to begin with.
Absolutely. Again, as you start to build out, to be able to have those two starting blocks, those two to be your starting blocks, that's phenomenal. And again, guys that are getting better, guys that that have moved the needle already. You don't have to worry about what they can do. We know what they can do, and they're going to get better. And that's the thing that I'm excited about. JJ will get better. Donnie will get better. Even his playing 14 games, the stuff that he did. From a statistics point, he was starting to kind of figure things out. So we're super excited. Everyone should be excited to be able to have those two. I mean, JJ is one of the most dynamic guards we have in college basketball. And again, he was like that this year. Now you talk about another year. We're really excited about him.
What gets you excited about JJ is a 4th year of college basketball and his 3rd in one program. Started, everybody knows, first year at Baker High School in Baldwinsville, then on to a prep school before going to Notre Dame and coming back. We're looking at footage of the Youngstown State game where he had a career high scoring. You needed every single point going into double overtime as he pushed a 40-point game in the Dome. Alex, to what degree did you self-scout your own personnel? And you had to, I know you guys we talk about numbers and value and NIL and the current state of affairs. You've got to have a sense of what are our guys worth, right? And you tell us, where did you start there, and what value do you place one way or another on Starling and Freeman who return? Yeah,
look, I had the fortune of being around the team at all times, being on the bench for games, getting to know these guys, understanding how they fit what Coach Autry's trying to do. The unfortunate part is they really only played, 6-7 games together between the injuries. The reality is there's not many guys like that on the market. The scoring guard market, JJ is up there as one of the elite one-on-one scorers out there. Donnie, there's not many guys that are 6'9", 6'10", can shoot the ball, can rebound at his level, but also have potential defensive versatility like he had. So to me, it became apparent that, hey, these are two building blocks that if we retain these guys, who would be tremendously valuable on the open market, they're going to be easy to build around. Now it's finding the other pieces, but they made so much sense because you compare them in so many different lineups. They're super versatile, and I think they understand what he's about and what his expectations are, and they can grow as leaders next year.
Red, can you address the conversations you have with JJ and Donnie at the end of the year? They're not just staying because they like the uniforms, right? You've got to put something in place in terms of them succeeding. They obviously like it here. They like the staff. One is a local person, obviously, in JJ. But how do you talk to them about the way they're going to get to where they want to go and that they get nurtured in another year?
Well, we just talked about the plan. Talked about the plan, what we wanted to put in place, obviously their individual plan and the program's plan, and what we were going to do to make that happen. And they believed in us. They believed in what we were doing. They both had extensive time to kind of, unfortunately this year, to kind of watch and sit back. And I think they really grew. I think they really grew from that, and they understood what we were trying to do. And I think when they came back, Donnie didn't come back when JJ came back. I thought he played some of his best basketball since he's been in college. And I think a lot of that had to do with when he had a chance to sit out and kind of sit with us. And, he was like a coach.
You wouldn't, Yeah, you wouldn't ask for it, but it was forced.
Right.
And so he had to sit and not have any control over it, right? And then see what else was happening on the floor. I thought it was particularly noteworthy at the end of the year when we saw Donnie Freeman spending a great deal of time with the coaches, in particular Brendan Strawn, but spending time on the laptop on the road, looking at film. Where should I be defensively? How can I do this and get better? Because that's the only way you can get better if you got 1 foot up, right? And at that time of year. Can you evaluate that, Red, for how did he take steps forward in the second half of his freshman year when he was unavailable to play?
Spending that time, again, I give tremendous amount of credit to my staff. We kept them engaged. We do a lot of film study. Again, it's not always just on the court. So we did a lot of film study trying to, get these guys to understand what we're trying to do visually, and then walking on the court. And I think us, getting, kind of struggling towards the end of the year, and he could start seeing himself. He started seeing himself. Oh, this is where I can help. Oh, this is where I need to be at. And I love the fact that he was engaged in every game, and we would talk after every game, and he would kind of give us his scouting report. Again, we do a lot of things to help our guys. We try to teach our guys how to play the game. We try to give our guys and equip our guys to become professionals. Not only while they're here, but when they leave. So when they step out and when they go, they're ready to be a professional and ready to compete. So again, I have one of the greatest staffs in the country. We have one of the greatest staffs in the country. So I thought it was easier for JJ and Donnie to buy in because we poured into them. We poured into all of our guys, and I think that made the decision a little bit easier.
Yeah, here's the freshmen that have averaged 13 and 7 in this program. Carmelo Anthony, Dante Green, O'Shea Brissett, Donnie Freeman.
Yeah, that's about right. You talk about a guy that, again, he played 13 or 14 games. I mean, we haven't seen his best basketball, but I know going into next year, he will start off so much further ahead, not only from just playing, but being able to learn. And then we got this whole summer. So, I'm just super excited for him. And to be honest with you, he grew another inch. So,
Wow.
we're super excited. You talk about versatility. Now you're talking about a guy 6'10", 6'11". That can, impact the game on both ends of the floor. And he's been challenged there, and I think he sees it and he understands it now.
Any health concerns there? Can you give us an update on that?
He's 100%. He's working out with us now. He's in the gym. We're easing him along, but everything is fine. He made a clean recovery, and we're just excited.
All right, so we're talking about the arc of the offseason. The first move, of course, is retaining J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman. And Alex, we told the story throughout the year. Not to tell tales out of school, but I sit behind Alex on the plane, and I'm not eavesdropping, Alex. You open up your laptop. Oh, and I'm like, okay, today he's going through the Colonial Athletic Association, and the next day is the Big 12, and the next road trip's the Big 10. And you're working your way through virtually every warm body that was potentially going to be on, as you say, on the open market. And let's face it, that's what we're talking about. It's free agency in college sports. Can you address your process first? Do you have a grading system? You talked about Red's sort of framework, like this is what I identify as a player that fits in the program. What was your point of view in the film you studied?
Yeah, I think it was understanding the current roster, knowing who we were going to potentially lose due to graduation more than anything, knowing here's what he values, here's what we're maybe lacking, and then from there going about, what is this player on each team, whatever it may be, what do they do at a special level that fits what he's about, whether that's shooting, defense, playmaking, rim protection, whatever it may be, it had to be special. And if they could do multiple things, more power to them. The goal was to find as many two-way players as possible, guys that impact offense and defense. Those are the winning teams. Those are the Houstons, the UConns of the world that we were, once competing with and still are competing with.
Yeah, we can't say that.
That's fair. But what we're trying to get back to and be, and I think ultimately we accomplished that. But the goal was to, raise the bar in terms of, it doesn't need to be about the best brand or the biggest name or the highest ranking, but more so substance over status. And from there it became very much apparent that, there were certain guys who I think fit him based on basketball IQ, based on shooting ability, based on defensive metrics, as well as just, size, length, athleticism. So there were a lot of areas where we wanted to grow. And I think just when you watch everyone out there, you kind of have a good idea of what the market is.
So folks know about some of the names and the backgrounds of the players that have been brought in. First off, from an overview, Red, what gives you confidence that this has worked? We talked about the big pieces, of course, in JJ and Donnie, but what gives you confidence you've gotten better?
I think, we've been able to get better from positional size, all around the board. I think when you think about, the Syracuse teams of the past, they've always had big guards and big wings, so I think we've gotten better in that way, positional size. And then when you talking about the talent that we brung in, we've brung in guys that are exceptional at their position. They do things exceptionally well, whatever that may be. And you add that with the two guys that we got returning, and then the talent of the freshmen, and today's different, right? Like these freshmen, it's hard to play freshmen now because of the transfer portal and playing against older teams. So if you're going to get freshmen, you got to get like really, really high level talented freshmen, kind of like what Duke does. We feel like our freshman class is like that.
Right.
We feel like our freshman class is like that, and not just because of one person, but overall, and everyone that is in that class. Very talented, you're very talented physically and IQ-wise. So I get excited. I can't wait to get these guys here. But I just know we've gotten better in those areas and those traits that we just talked about.
Well, what are the traits? When Sadiq White catches your eye, when Carmelo Anthony catches your eye, and we just saw him dominate in the Jordan Brand Classic. Yes, I know it's multiple skills and that type of thing, but when you see them, what sticks out?
I think when you talk about a guy like Sadiq White, first of all, when you have footage of banging your head on the top of the backboard, I think that's the one thing that really sticks out. But then when you sit down and you spend time with him, you talk about a young man that is come from the state of North Carolina, and to be able to go down there and again, he's not like a top 60 guy. Right. He's a top 25 guy.
Right.
And so him to come and for us to be able to go down there, and be able to recruit a kid like that and a young man like that kind of speaks to who he is. He's different. I like to say Syracuse is different. You got to be different to play here, right? You just have to be. You got to be tough to play here. And obviously he checks those boxes. But you're talking about a guy that's just scratching the surface. But when you talk about, some of our older people, you talk about guys like, Stevie Thompson and Dave Johnson types of athleticism, guys that just kind of, they
above the rim.
Above the rim, way over the rim. Not even, jumping up and sitting on the rim. You're talking about stuff like that. And here it is, we don't have one guy, we got a couple of guys like that. Yeah. So, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, as you say, yes, you'd love to find 12 completely well-rounded, good at everything kind of players. In reality, of course, that can't happen when they're 19 years old, and you're looking to develop them, obviously, and build out some of the traits and improve weaknesses and all of that. But if you could start with a big league tool or two here, right, Alex? That's what scouting is about, baseball. What tools do you have? And if you can kind of coalesce the strengths of a number of these guys, that you're headed in the right direction.
Absolutely, and we knew that Donnie and JJ are both capable scorers. I think the goal was, how do you surround them with guys who, they're capable of scoring, and they very much can score, but they have an appreciation for doing other things, whether that's rebounding, that's defense, that's playmaking, screening, cutting, all the things that make for a well-rounded team on both ends.
We'll deal with this, of course, when we come to the season, Red, but you have to have that in mind, right? If you're thinking about it, you're starting with J.J. Starling, who has a role, who has a track record. Donnie Freeman has a track record. That comes back into kind of what you're talking about with fit, that for all the skill that Sadiq White and Carmelo Anthony and whoever else you bring in may have, it's got to mesh.
Oh, yeah. I think everything has to match. Everything has to fit. And I think, when you have those two centerpieces, I think even the people that's coming in, they understand it. Like they help recruit the other guys that's coming in to play with them and play around them. So again, you see like that's special, right? Like you don't see that. You know, JJ and Donna, they were a part of the process of helping us recruit these guys to come in. So again, you're talking about chemistry already kind of being formed and everybody wanting to play with each other. So again, you know, that's exciting, you know, as a coach, you know, when you have your two, you know, staples, they are helping us recruit. You know, they are in there. They are because they want to be good. They want us to be good, and they want to be good.
Well, one of the really exciting things, of course, with Cayenne is the reinvigoration of the connection, not that it ever was weakened, with Melo. And to see Carmelo Anthony around and in the building has exciting prospects for him to kind of sink his teeth into the things that are going on here. How's your relationship with Melo, both you guys, and what do you think, like when he says, hey, I want to help? Obviously, he wants Cayenne to be on a team and a program that thrives.
I'll tell you what, the one thing I love about Melo and our relationship is that he's let Cayenne be Cayenne, you know, and he's brought him up.
As opposed to the next Melo.
Right. He's brought him up to be and let him learn and go through the struggles. You know, I think the one thing that was so appealing to me and our staff is that, you know, Cayenne in high school had never started until his senior year, right? And he finished up. He went to 2 schools, not 4 or 5 or whatever it may be. So, you know, he's a worker. He loves it because he loves it, right? Like, and Melo kind of stays back, hands back, you know, and through the recruiting process, you know, Melo said, you don't have to talk to me. You don't have to talk to me. You got to talk to him, you know, and that's what we did. You know, we recruited him. And again, people, you know, when you grow up like that, some people, you know, he had to get challenged every day he stepped on the court.
He wasn't sneaking up on anybody.
Because he's Cayenne Anthony. Right. So he was a big game for everybody. And the way he handled himself, the way he responded. And again, when I saw him as a freshman, he was okay. When I saw him as a sophomore, man, he's getting a little bit better. When I saw him as a junior, I looked at my whole staff, I said, he's going to be good. He's coming. He's coming. And then this year, what he did this year was you know, just another step in him getting better. And, you know, again, he has to play, every game he has to play is someone else's. He has to bring it because someone else is excited to play against him. And that's where you see his competitiveness. That's where you see his toughness.
Close followers of the program, of course, know a lot of the old stories and the story that Coach Boeheim kind of tells about being told originally that, hey, you got to come down to Baltimore and check out this Carmelo Anthony. And it's, hey, what took you so long? And in your case, it's a little bit of a different, it's a build. And then obviously everybody is sold that you got a guy that's certainly going to add value to the program.
Yeah, you know, and the thing about, you know, Cayenne is that, you know, he didn't blink one eye when he wanted to come here. Right? Like a lot of people would get away from that, right? Like, you know, they want to kind of forge their own thing. He's comfortable. He leaned right into it, and again, he was also another guy. Coach, you know, who we getting? You know, who like, we want to be good. Who we getting? So again, you know, I hope people can, the excitement is there because we got a group of guys that all want to be there and they all want to play with each other.
Alex, you like comparing notes with these guys when they come on visits? And hey, who else can we get in the fold? Do you have those conversations with them?
No, but it's like Coach said, you want guys that want to be here. And this program doesn't take a back step to anyone. So the fact that we're trying to find guys who understand the history of Syracuse basketball, understand what it means to put on the jersey, understand what it is to play in front of 30, 35,000 people at the Dome, that matters. Yeah. That matters. You shouldn't have to convince people to come here. It should be apparent. And I think these guys, they have an appreciation and understanding for what it means to be here.
How about a quick thought, Red, on Aaron and Luke, who, through no fault of their own, they're not, you know, top 25 guys. They're important pieces to you. And it sounds like as they sort of developed, even after kind of committing and being in the fold, we're kind of keeping an eye on their progress throughout their last season. How do you view them as fits in all this?
You know, it's funny. We talk, you know, obviously Sadiq and Cayenne from that class, they obviously they get a lot of the headlines. Yeah. You know, but when you talk about a guy like Luke Fennell, when you really kind of talk to people outside of, you know, the Americas, you know, very high level guy. A lot of people say
he's Australian.
You're right. If he was in our system, he's probably a top 25 guy. So very excited. You know, a guy that plays and works and trains against pros. You know, so we're excited for him. And then you talk about a guy like Womack. He's a guy that he's probably the only guy this year out of everybody that we have that's probably, I think, had 2 50-point games.
Yeah, average 30 points a game.
2 50-point games. A guy that can, put the ball in the hole. Does he have to get better? Absolutely. But you're talking about a long, athletic, dad's a coach.
Yeah. So
he loves it. He has the work ethic. So extremely talented, even though they may not get those headlines. Those two guys, they don't take a backseat. They're just as talented as the other two guys that we have.
Sure. We thank everybody for joining us, mostly season ticket holders and the viewing audience here. And we asked for questions for people that were going to be watching with us tonight. And so many of them, Coach, had that same thing as we transition into this is the NIL era. How competitive can you be? How did this kind of group and class come together? Can you give a sense to your fans here? These are your most invested fans and ticket holders. What's it like? You go on the road here in terms of you want to compete to get the people that you think fit the best in your program. How well equipped have you been? You got a little bit of a momentum maybe into this season that you didn't have last, and where can you go in terms of the clout you have on the road?
Well, I think what we've done we've progressed in this NIL era. We've progressed, obviously with things moving forward, we've moved forward. Like anything, it takes some time to adjust, and I think we've done that. And, we've done that with a plan, right? And we've done that with a plan and being able to, you have to hit and meet certain standards and criteria to be here. So again, sometimes, you don't even get into the resources part of it until you hit those things. And I think once you hit those marks, then the resources work themselves out, right? Because when you want to be somewhere and everything is mutual, things tend to work out. But as we go forward in college, no different than any sport, basketball or football. NIL is that's the new thing.
Not going away.
It's not going away, and how we move forward with this is a great community. This community in Syracuse and these teams mean a lot to the community, and I know I can speak for all the coaches. We want to put the best product out there, right? We want to compete for championships, and the only way that can happen is if we do it together, collaboratively. And it's not just individuals, but we need help from businesses, because when you talk about this experience, the businesses, they can help, and everyone can help. So now if you got your donors and you got your businesses and you got this community, right? Because especially during our season, it's a long season.
Sure.
It's a long season, right? We want to be, you want to be happy, you want to be excited, you want to have something to be proud of.
Well, it's a thread throughout this whole community throughout the year, but certainly, as you say, through the long season or just the months of the season. But any time year-round, people here are talking about Syracuse basketball. The questions here: who's going to start? Who's going to things you don't have the answer to just yet. But that is obviously where people go, and the community's better off if the football and basketball teams here are competitive.
I think everybody is better off when that happens, and I think that's what makes this place special. And I think when we bring our student athletes in, they get a chance to feel that when we go on visits and we walk around and we go to restaurants and we, walking through the community, people recognizing, who they are, who we are. And again, that already speaks to them. Now we have to be able to be competitive, right? And it's just, we have to be able to be competitive because that's where we're at right now. And I think, it's not just one person. Right. We can do it as a community. Right, we have it really, this Syracuse community can do it, and we just need to rally around. And I think everyone is starting to understand the impact that it can have on your fun time.
Sure.
You're watching and being able to that sense of pride. Right, you got what we're used to. What we're used to. It's changed, and it's there. It can be done. It should be done, and we're not going to stop until it gets done because this is a resilient community. This is a resilient coaching staff. This is a resilient, athletic department. So, we just got to keep fighting.
One thing about the NIL era in college sports, of course, is that it's given fans agency. You want to speak up for what's important to you. As you say, you want to invest in your fun time and in your happiness. NIL is one way to do it. You want some say-so on how the roster is built. That's more or less how things work here. So it is unusual. It's not something that people have embraced for a long time or have grown up with. But there is some pride now taken in how do you do it, because your competitors are doing it, right? I mean, in terms of the funds that are being raised out there, that pool. When you have X, you decide now you're going to go out, and it helps Alex to know, as you say, you're going into the market, right? So you have a sense of where the price points are for getting some of these deals done. How do you feel you did in terms of the bang for your buck, so to speak, in this offseason?
Yeah, no, I think we did really well, Matt. I think, again, you retain Donnie and JJ, who, if they go on the open market, you can only guess. Yeah. And then I think a lot of the guys that we got, again, they fit us. They may not be for everyone else, but shoot, if they were on the open market again, and they were on the open market, like, we beat out really, really good programs for these players. Again, yes, you need money to be competitive. I think the beauty of us and our staff is we have real process. We're actually scouting these guys. We're not just throwing a ton of money out at some random name just because. So I think we're going to be really, really successful, and I think the pieces are going to fit. And I think the best part of it, and I say this to all the guys on the recruiting visits, we have like-minded guys. They all love basketball. They all want to be in the gym. They're focused on basketball, and they can understand what it takes to play at this level and be on a big stage and take coaching and have good days and bad. And I think it's going to be really fun to watch this all unfold.
So we'll get your thoughts on some of the personnel in a second, but what comes to mind right now is the idea that you look at the last college basketball season. You can be resourced and not get there, but nobody who got there wasn't resourced. You look at the Final Four, like a Houston you mentioned before. They have a great coach. They have a great program. They stepped it up in the NIL era. Nobody got there without significant influx from talent from other programs and from building in that way through NIL. But it's no guarantee. Some of the highest priced teams also didn't make the tournament, or certainly didn't advance very far in the tournament. So that's sort of the landscape of college sports where we are. I want to go back and let's just hit on a couple of names. I know that the fans are wanting to know what your thoughts are, the outlook for a couple of these guys. We had mentioned at the outset that Syracuse retained a couple of the best players, or maybe the best 1-2 punch that was available to return in the ACC with J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman. Then you bring over another one of the better players in the ACC, and Nathan George from Georgia Tech. He led the conference in assists and one of their top scorers, and a steady guy and kind of a known commodity, somebody you'd played against and were familiar with.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Nate George, we had a chance to compete against him for the last 2 years. As a freshman, he was okay. Yeah. And then last year, I just really thought he was one of the best point guards in our league and in the country. You talk about a guy that's proven. You talk about a guy that kind of, we're here talking to our fans. Yeah. This is a guy that kind of gives you that Tyler Ennis feel a little bit.
Same neck of the woods, right? It's a Toronto guy.
Same neck of the woods. He gives you that Tyler Ennis feel. A guy that can run your team, a guy that can make shots, a guy that can get guys the ball, and he does it at an elite level, with positional size. So again, he's a guy that you get excited about. You really do.
How many times have we seen this in the last few years in major college football and basketball? A guy, and it wasn't in his case the best game, but a guy who has a nice game against you, winds up on the roster the next year. He had 13, 5, and 5 in the game in the Dome this past year, and you wouldn't mind penciling in a few more 13, 5s, and 5s in the Dome and elsewhere in the orange and blue.
Yeah, we like to take those stats and take those with us and then add it to our 20 and 15 point scores as well. So, again, had a chance, to compete against him, and you just see them get better each year. And I think that's the one thing when you talk about excitement for this team. Everyone that will take the court next year has gotten better. Even our best player has gotten better. Right, so now you talk about guys that are excited, like Alex just said, excited to be in the gym. How when something starts, when you start lifting weights and you start to see those muscles pop, and now you start to look in the mirror and now you keep lifting weights. That's kind of how our team is, right?
Love it.
Everyone is really getting, they really kind of starting to hit their stride. And the greatest thing is that they know that we can do it together. So that's the exciting part of it. They want to do it together.
Alex, these attributes that we're talking about are guys that you identified were fits for Coach Autry's program, and to wear the block S and that kind of deal, the script Syracuse that the fans love so much. If you could comment quickly on Nathan George. And the other one you kind of mentioned when you were talking about underdog and a story is really Nate Kings, is who I think you're talking about there, right? I mean, they all have it, but there's a background about getting better, about doing right by his family. Could you let us in a little bit on what intangibles you think are coming to the table here?
Yeah, I think it's about mental toughness, Matt. Yeah. It's about guys who love basketball. It's about guys who were lightly recruited for one reason or another out of high school that have continuously gotten better, have fought obstacles, and are in this position for a reason because they are self-made. I think Nate George is a great example of that, of someone who was lightly recruited, gets to the ACC, not many people know who he is, and in 2 years has turned himself into, I think, one of the premier playmakers in college basketball. It's a kid like Nate Kings who started out at NAIA, goes to junior college, gets to Oregon State, tears his ACL, and becomes a 3-and-D wing, all these years later, who earlier in the season was flipping burgers at McDonald's, has overcome so much in his life. So again, it's finding guys who, there are going to be highs and lows during the season, much more highs than lows, though, don't worry. But when things get tough and their back is against the wall in a tight game, it's going to be nothing because they've been there before, because they've seen tougher things in life. And I think that is so important these days when college basketball has become so physical, so taxing. It's tough. NIL in a lot of ways makes things easier, but it also makes things tougher. The spotlight shines brighter. And we need guys who, when things get tough, they go to the gym. They play through their mistakes. And I think these guys are more than capable of that.
Yeah, well, folks, those are the types of people that are going to be welcome to your community when the team gets together. We're going to go through a couple of these fan questions to kind of wrap our discussion, but I know one of them, and a lot of these are kind of composites that I could put together. What is next, okay? You're not necessarily winning or losing games here in late April, and are you done? Do you have more roster additions? How do you evaluate where you are right this second and what the next little bit holds?
Well, I mean, you're always trying to see what's out there. You're always trying to, better your team. Would I say we're done? I would not say that. I would not say that we're done. We're going to make, we're looking to get better. And if we see someone out there that we think can help us to fit everything that we've talked about, and they want to be a part of this, then we'll get them. We'll make a move. But if not, we're just not going to take anyone just to take somebody. Sure. It has to matter and it has to fit. So again, as a staff and as a coach, I'm always trying to see how we can get better. And so the portal was still open. Right. The portal was still open, so
it's closed to enter, but it's open. The exit is open, right?
It's guys in there. It's guys in there. So you always you want to see if someone is in there, someone comes across our attention that we think may be able to help us.
The question is asked here a bunch of times, what can you do at the center position? Are you looking specifically for a position? Do you have that in mind? Like, hey, we absolutely have X or Y needs, or is it just kind of best available that fits for you?
This is a question that's been talked about, and we have two centers.
Right.
We have two centers, two 6'9" centers that are strong. One of them, again, when I talked earlier, one of them has a 7'3" wingspan. One of those guys has, a 41-inch vertical. So again, we have two guys right now. The other guy has an unbelievable motor with a 7'1" wingspan, and that can move. So again, we're going to do what we need to do. If something comes available that fits, we'll do it. But I just, want people to understand, you can play that position. I think Houston played that They was they have a
Yeah, I mean,
6'9" guy.
yeah, but I mean, shoot, look at
Yeah.
NBA Finals a few years ago. Robert Williams, Boston Celtics, pretty good. Look at one of the better centers of college basketball in the last 10 years, Oscar Tshiebwe, 6'8", led the country in rebounding. So again, it goes back to, athleticism, verticality, heart, motor, everything like that. These guys they're physical, they're tough, they care. They're going to be switchable, and they're going to make life a lot easier for everyone else.
All right, cool. Well, I'm going to run down just do a lightning round here. We'll call it good. All right. I'll take the first one. Peter and Camillus wanted to know how many late 8 p.m. or later start times do you project having on the schedule? Well, Peter, the schedule is it's in the ether right now. Nobody knows anything about who's playing whom, let alone when they are playing. But I will ballpark that at 4, give or take. Right? In the given year, we have 4, 5, maybe 6. 6 would be a lot, depending on. Don't have to go to the West Coast this year. I think we can say with a fair degree of certainty. Don't have to worry about that. So let's say 4. We'll set the over/under on the later start times. Not something that Coach Autry or Alex have any say-so over is the tip-off time. But that was one of the questions that came in. This is a good one from Glenn in Clifton Park. For Alex, how do you find guys when you're talking about one from Australia, one from Montana State? Do you get tipped off? Do your analytics raise a flag? Where do you start? Is that just because you're scouring literally every roster? How does somebody like that first come on your radar?
Yeah, I think part of it is you get tipped off about certain guys, certain agents call you, certain AAU coaches, whoever it may be. I try to watch everyone because especially with the way he wants to play, overseas basketball, they're smart, they're fundamentally sound, they know how to play, so that's a big part of it. But I think it's when you put in the work the entire year, you have to, keep tabs and catalog each guy. And I kind of go red, yellow, green, like very simple, very elementary to kind of figure out, hey, this guy is someone for us. This guy is someone I'm not so sure about. Hey, this guy may not fit. So we try to watch everyone. Again, there's no player too minimal, too low. I read emails. Maybe I shouldn't. It says a lot about my life and priorities. But at the end of the day, we're looking at everyone. You look at recent NBA drafts, and it's guys who have come out of nowhere that have come from mid-majors, whatever it may be. Like, we don't discriminate. We look for all types of players from all walks of life.
I think you just got 3 email dings while you were
Yeah,
answering.
probably.
Might get some suggestions. Kim in Syracuse has a question. I'm just going to kind of augment a little bit, Coach. Does the team have a therapist or spiritual advisor? And Alex was talking about how hard, these guys have a lot going for them, but it is a grind to make the commitment to play at this level. Can you address your support staff, coaching staff, and then what you do beyond that? Obviously, you got a change coming on strength and conditioning coach, the athletic trainer, nutritionist, with that type of thing. That whole staff does what for you?
Our whole staff, we're connected, and they understand the task at hand, and we have an amazing staff. And so we have constant communication with our guys. So by the time they get to practice, we kind of have a really good feel for where they're at and handling things that day. But we do have a FCA member with us.
William Payne.
Now, obviously, he's there for a lot of teams, but he really does a really good job of being present around our guys and spending time with them. And that has nothing to do with us. That's their time, right? That's talking about them as their spirituality and them as human beings, because it's a lot to take in today's world with social media and all these things, and everyone has an opinion and has something to say. Again, I'm grown, so I can handle it, but these young guys that grow up in this, they need that stuff. So that's really a really good question, and we have those. We have strength coaches for our guys to go see and have. So we have those things. John Wild has made a conscious effort to have those type of resources, for all of our athletes.
Yeah, Kevin and DeWitt was asking that question about making improvements in that area, nutrition, strength, and conditioning. What's your vision there of how that works out?
I think at the end of the day, you want to instill toughness, and you want to instill confidence You want to instill different things in that area, and I think that's just kind of the stepping something before you get to practice, right? Again, we all know, when you're eating right and you're lifting and you're doing all that stuff, you feel good about yourself, man. You feel strong. You feel like it. So I think those things are important. So that's why we've added, for last year, a nutritionist, with our strength and conditioning program, and kind of combining those, as before we get to work and before we get on it, they feel good about themselves already.
Sure. And the last one, we're kind of. Again, a lot of these questions are kind of repetitive, which we appreciate. A clear message here in terms of the fans. They want to know how you're going to get better, right? Everybody wants to be in the NCAA tournament and have those goals. One of the fans wrote, "What can we do beyond cheering the team? What is the expectation, Coach, of where the fans can do their part?"
I think the fans not only do they come out and support. Obviously, we talked about NIL and being able to, take part in those, what the different situations. I mean, the different programs that we have. But how we will get better is that, the one thing about it is we'll spend a lot of time, which we always do. But you got a group of guys that all kind of are pushing each other. Iron sharpening iron, and again, we have a very motivated coaching staff. You have a very motivated leader in me. Obviously last year was disappointing, so not to say that I wasn't motivated, but again, that can't happen, and I don't expect that to happen. And I think we leave that in the past, but we move forward. So as moving forward, everything that we talked about and discussed today, if you can't get excited about that, then I don't know what you can get excited about, because I know I'm excited. And we got guys that want to be in the gym, and, we have everything. We have all the answers to the tests. And I think we have guys that are, ready to get there, ready to put this uniform on. I'm excited to put this uniform on with everything that we have going on. Obviously there's finances and all that stuff. Nobody that's here is here because of the finances. That's what I will tell you. They're here because they want to be a part of this great tradition, this great basketball program.
And for the reasons we talked about before, it really does have that family kind of feel. You spend so much time with one another. You mentioned Pastor Payne. I think there's got to be multiple Pastor Paynes.
He might have some doubles, triples, right?
I know how much time he spends with the basketball program. I'm in football an hour later, and he's over there with Coach Brown and everybody else. And so his presence certainly is felt. And then the staff and just the making a plan for each individual athlete's a really important thing. You had talked about it never stops. Ducked in on Coach Autry's office just the other day just to kind of check in. And you're up there, it's April 25th or whatever, and you're drawing out plays on the whiteboard.
That's it, yeah.
So that part never stops. We talk a great deal tonight about roster building, of course, but the tactics and the ins and outs and how to improve goes on. So, gentlemen, thanks for the time tonight. Best of luck when we can't wait to the seasons ahead. Enjoy the summer. I know it won't be as restful for you as it might be for the rest of us, and we'll see you at the Mello Center in the fall, okay?
Look forward to it. Thank you, Matt.
Appreciate
Adrian
it, Matt.
Autry and Alex Klein. For those of you that are season ticket holders, keep in mind the renewal deadline is Thursday, May 1st. For those of you that are thinking about tickets, on the fence, have a neighbor trying to convince them, any ticket requests can be handled at cuse.com/tickets. Thanks for joining us, everybody. From all of us here at the Newhouse Sports Media Center, for Alex Klein and Adrian Autry, I'm Matt Park saying so long and thanks for being with us.